bend the knee and join me. Together, we will leave the world a better place than we found it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today, we will be breaking down and giving our initial thoughts on the 4th episode of the 2nd season of House of the Dragon, the prequel series to Game of Thrones that takes place during a time known as the Dance of the Dragons from the books. This breakdown and the following ones as well will contain spoilers from the source material. This is your spoiler warning, you have been warned. And this is an episode that truly displays the name of this era. And the 4th episode of this season being titled The Red Dragon and the Gold. Before we get started with the episode, there are always two sides to a story, and there are two sides to this war. Team Green and Team Black. If you wish to choose your side and represent them until the very end, feel free to check out our merch made just for you to pick your side. The link is in the description below. Anyways though, this episode begins with Damon, as he is still having the dreams and the visions put upon him by Alice Rivers, just as we saw in the previous episode where they teased the battle above God's Eye. Well, here we see him walk into the throne room of the Red Keep as he approaches the Iron Throne, as once again Millie's Rhaenyra returns, wearing Viserys' crown that also belonged to Jaehaerys Targaryen, as she speaks to him in High Valyrian. This scene is reminiscent of when Rhaenyra visited Daemon, who sat on the Iron Throne in Season 1, where they also conversed in High Valyrian. Daemon continues to have these visions regarding Rhaenyra, his actions, and the throne, as we learn he is struggling with the aspect of succession. Rhaenyra tells Daemon that he created her, reflecting on how his actions are always shadowing over her, as she is blamed for what he has done. And this is also likely in reference to the nickname she was eventually given, being Rhaenyra the Cruel. She also accuses him of being set on destroying her, which seems to be an ongoing theme here, as she is losing trust with him, and many of her own loyalists question whether this is his plan or not as well. He ends up beheading Rhaenyra in this vision in the same exact spot he beheaded Aemond in the first season, and this is also the same spot where Jon Snow puts Daenerys down as well. Rhaenyra's head then speaks to Daemon once more, telling him that there is a raven. This is where he is woken up from his dreams and visions by Simon Strong. He informs Daemon of Criston and his army's movements and attacks, which directly plays into the passage from the book. Sir Criston marched on Rosberry and Stokeworth, whose lords had only recently repented their allegiance to the Queen, commanding them to prove their loyalty by adding their power to his own. Daemon is then brought in to meet with Oscar Tully, the grandson of Lord Grover Tully, who is unable to travel due to his age, which has been mentioned quite a bit this season already. Daemon wants an army, but Oscar really does not have the word to control the armies in the Riverlands, as his grandfather is still alive. Oscar is only the heir. Daemon does not care about this, however, so he just suggests for Oscar to just take his own grandfather out, which he refuses to do as family is extremely important to House Tully. Daemon dismisses him after this and calls for House Blackwood to be called upon instead. This is of course one of the two houses that we saw at the Battle of the Burning Mill in the previous episode. Of course, with their long-lasting rivalry with House Bracken, who have declared for Aegon, they will likely declare for Rhaenyra. We then cut to Rhaenys as she meets with Alan of Hull. She clearly recognizes him and mentions that he was the one that rescued Corlys from the shipwreck in Season 1. Corlys walks over and dismisses Alan, and Rhaenys remarks to Corlys that she knows exactly who Alan is. And she ushers Corlys to stop hiding him under the tides and raise him in the royalty. This is of course because Alan is a bastard, alongside his brother Adam. both of which will go on to have big parts in this war. However, their meeting is cut short because Rhaenys is called to Dragonstone by Baela. Now with Alicent, as she looks over a piece of Balerion the Black Dread that she gifted to Viserys. Balerion was of course the dragon to Aegon the Conqueror and the largest dragon to have ever lived. However, she ends up dropping it and breaking the piece, and a wing falls off because of this. This is a major foreshadowing for the battle to come in this very episode. The Maester walks in and delivers Alicent a cup of what we can just call the Plan B tea, which we saw a few times in the first season. Alicent clearly thinks herself to be pregnant with Criston's child, so she drinks the tea herself. Back at Dragonstone, as the members of Rhaenyra's council, in her absence, continue questioning her actions and showing lots of doubt, as they urge for further action to be taken when it comes to the actual war and the conflict. Baela and Jaehaerys are heading the council here, it seems, and forced to just defend themselves and their queen, as Rhaenys has arrived trying to bring vigilance to this meeting. But Sir Alfred just keeps on going, even dismissing Rhaenys, as she is not Rhaenyra's appointed hand, which is when Corlys Velaryon arrives and puts everyone in check. In the book, Rhaenyra did name Corlys her hand, which is likely why everyone here begins listening when he walks in. But he has also been on many other councils before, including Viserys's. If she hasn't already named him hand off screen, this is because he is also a very respected warrior and a very wise man. Cutting to the fallen town of Duskendale as Criston Cole and his forces continue battles across the Crownlands. Here they have defeated House Darkland's forces, and Criston puts their lord to death as he's labeled as a traitor, which is a bit ironic knowing Criston is technically the one who has betrayed the true heir and the crown. Before he is executed, he tells Criston that his death will come in kind. Well, I think this is what most of the audience is hoping. Amongst Criston's forces are a few other houses. The white shields with the red stripes are forces from House Rosby, and the one with the white sheep is that of House Stokeworth. Their forces will now be doubled as the remaining soldiers from House Darkland kneel and join them, as they plan to head to Rook's Rest, instead of Harrenhal. This is later to be revealed as Criston and Aemond's discussed plans, as taking Rook's Rest will be relatively easy, and will also cut Dragonstone off. This also adds into the fact that Damon is occupied at Harrenhal, which is still basically in ruins due to Aegon and Balerion's attack many years ago. Now, during a meeting with the High Council, Aegon is furious with the plans going ahead that happened behind his back, and also the fact that Damon has taken Harrenhal. Larys suggests that Harrenhal is not a great loss to them, however, as he controls all of its gold and it's not full of forces. However, Aemond takes control of the council meeting here basically, and it's quite clear their tension is building up, especially playing off of last episode when Aegon was making fun of him. Aemond speaks in High Valyrian here, and Aegon tries to converse as well, but he stumbles over his words and does not seem to make much sense. I think that this is a great reflection on how ignorant he really is and how everyone else around him is much more intelligent. During the High Council's meeting, Alicent was absent due to how she was feeling. So Larys Strong goes to meet with her afterwards, and she is clearly still affected by the fact that she believes that she was pregnant. Larys clearly suspects her relationship with Criston as he questions her about being worried about him. And then the two speak of Viserys' love for the history books, and how it provided so much knowledge. It seems as if Larys also doubts that Viserys wished for Aegon to be his heir, But as Alicent says, the significance of Viserys' intentions died with him. We then head back to Harrenhal as Damon wakes up once again with his visions, as he follows a figure throughout the castle that is clearly supposed to be Aemond. However, when the figure turns around, it is revealed to be Damon's face with the features of Aemond. This just shows how similar the two really are, and how much their futures and their ends will eventually be intertwined. Damon walks into another room and finds Alice Rivers, the very person who is likely responsible for putting these visions in Damon's head. Her last name suggests that she is a bastard, but it was never really confirmed in the source material. She explains that she is basically a maester, but she clearly practices with the dark arts as she brews up some sort of concoction that looks like it involves blood. The book read off plenty of passages suggesting the characteristics of Alice Rivers. Who was this woman? A serving wench who dabbled in potions and spells, says Munkin. A woods witch, claims Septon Eustace. A malign enchantress who bathed in the blood of virgins to preserve her youth, Mushroom would have us believe. Was she in truth a witch who lay with demons, bringing forth dead children as payment for the knowledge that they gave her? Was she a simple-minded slattern, as Eustace believes, a wanton who used her poisons and potions to bind men to her, body and soul? Alice also mentions that of the heart tree here, which Damon was standing next to in the previous episode in his vision. The heart tree in itself is a weirwood tree, a very significant symbol in the realm. She explains that the paste from inside the trees is laced with powerful materials, and that the bed that Damon lays on may even be made of it, which could explain the bewitched visions he is experiencing. She ends up mocking him over the entire succession aspect and how this conflict over legitimacy would have never happened if he just sat the throne in the first place, which is where she offers him up some sort of potion that she brewed. After drinking it, we then see him meeting with Willem Blackwood, now grown up. This is the same character that we saw in the first season who tried to gain Rhaenyra's hand in marriage, who then went on to kill Amos Bracken in the middle of the event. Willem is likely based off of the character Samuel Blackwood from the book, as Willem was not in the book himself. At first, Damon's hearing is very muffled here, but if you do listen closely, you can hear Willem mention that of his nephew, Benji Cott Blackwood. In the book, he is also known as Bloody Ben, and he also plays a major role in the war. All I'm gonna say is, you better watch your back, Boris Baratheon. Damon's visions continue still as he sees that of his former dead wife, Laena Velaryon. All while, Willem pledges to Rhaenyra as long as Daemon and a dragon take justice upon House Bracken for their actions at the Burning Mill. Back at the High Council meeting as Aegon just sits there impatiently and in silence. He has had enough and just storms out of the room, which is where the council just continues on with their discussions after he is gone. This just goes to show how much he really does offer to their meetings. Absolutely nothing. This even carries on into the next scene with his mother, Alicent, who just scolds him for his arrogance and how those in his council provide him with wisdom that he just keeps on ignoring. Those people on the council earned their respect, and Viserys knew that when he was king. As she says, she wishes Aegon was half the king his father was. She then tells him that he should just do what is needed of him, which is nothing. This is of course what drives him to do something that he will later go on to regret for the rest of his life. Now at Rook's Rest, as Criston prepares his men to march forth and attack the fortress during the daytime as they will not expect it. This is where Rhaenyra returns to Dragonstone in the middle of a council meeting as they urge for a dragon to go to Rook's Rest to take on Cole's forces. As Jaehaerys furiously seriously questions where she has been all of this time while her council and her army have been fighting for her. She explains that she went to King's Landing to meet with Alicent to get that answer that she needed, whether or not war was needed or not. And now she has her answer. Her father ruled the Seven Kingdoms with 80 years of peace, and Jaehaerys Targaryen before that also ruled in an era of peace himself. So it makes a lot of sense that she would at least try her best to continue that. At first, both Rhaenyra and Jaehaerys try to volunteer themselves to go to Rook's Rest with their dragons, but Rhaenyra's loss would cause the war to be over and Jaehaerys lacks the experience. This leads to Rhaenys volunteering to go herself. Rhaenys and Meleys are far more experienced in war, and Rhaenys has an incredible bond with her dragon, as we see throughout this episode. Meleys is also Rhaenyra's largest dragon that is available at the time. Vermithor is larger and more experienced than that of Meleys, but he has been unclaimed for many years, while Caraxes is off with Damon at Harrenhal. Aegon, still frustrated from earlier, smashes a glass with a golden dragon on it to the ground. Huge foreshadowing for what is to fall upon him this episode, as he gears up in the Conqueror's armor, which of course does not fit him, as he gets Sunfire ready to ride. All while Rhaenys, the Red Queen, geared up in her red dragon scale-like armor, speaks to Meleys in High Valyrian, as they too prepare for battle. As the beginning of the Battle of Rook's Rest gets ever closer, Rhaenyra stands in front of a dragon's skull. This is the skull of Meraxes, as it has a massive piece of its skull missing, caused by a scorpion shot. Meraxes was the dragon of Rhaenys Targaryen the First of her name, being one of Aegon the Conqueror's sister wives. Jace meets with her down here as he swears that he just wishes to fight for her and her claim, as well as his, as he is the heir after her. But she just wishes to keep him safe, as she begins to explain to him how the Targaryen rulers are more than that of just kings or queens. They are protectors. Each of these leaders has passed down a tale and a message, from heir to heir, that of Aegon the Conqueror's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire, she says to Jace. As Meleys and Rhaenys fly into battle burning Criston's forces, he sets off a signal, alerting that of Aemond and Vhagar, who hide in the forest. But the two decide to wait as Aegon and Sunfire are seen arriving themselves. Aegon flies in with Sunfire as they rush Meleys. He speaks to Sunfire in English while Rhaenys speaks to Meleys in High Valyrian. Again, showing difference in the wisdom and experience between the two. And due to that, Meleys and Rhaenys quickly get the upper hand over Aegon and Sunfire as they claw at the Golden Dragon. This is where Aemond flies in with Vhagar, firing at both Aegon and Rhaenys. Sunfire shields Aegon with one of his wings, causing the two to fall to the ground and out of the battle, as Rhaenys flies around and returns for round 2, as she straps herself to Meleys and the saddle. Just as she said in the first season, she will not leave Meleys, no matter what. She claimed her when she was only 13 years old, and their bond is incredibly strong. Again, the experience and the skill is shown as Meleys is able to get some shots off on Vhagar. But of course, even if Aemond is not as experienced as Rhaenys, Vhagar is more experienced than that of Meleys. This is why he is so good at his sneak attacks. He is too slow to react to most things, so he relies on sneaking his opponents, in which he does to Meleys and Rhaenys after they flee, biting Meleys' neck as she takes one last look at Rhaenys, a final goodbye look, as the two fall to the ground. The Red Queen and the Queen who never was is now no more, due to a dance of dragons. Now, this battle actually takes place a bit differently in the source material, as it reads as follows. Princess Rhaenys made no attempt to flee. With a glad cry and a crack of her whip, she turned Meleys toward the foe. Against Vhagar alone, she might have had some chance, but against Vhagar and Sunfire together, doom was certain. The dragons met violently 1,000 feet above the field of battle, as balls of fire burst and blossomed, so bright that men swore later that the sky was full of suns. The crimson jaws of Meleys closed around Sunfire's golden neck for a moment, till Vhagar fell upon them from above. All three beasts went spinning toward the ground. They struck the ground so hard that stones fell from the battlements of Rook's Rest half a league away. Those closest to the dragons did not live to tell the tale. Those farther off could not see the flame and smoke. It was hours before the fires guttered out. But from those ashes, only Vhagar rose unharmed. Meleys was dead, broken by the fall and ripped to pieces upon the ground. And Sunfire, that splendid golden beast, had one wing half torn from his body. Now, in the series, it was still a trap, however the two brothers went in separate. And Aemond was even willing to eliminate his brother Aegon for this victory. We do see the end of the described battle occur though, as Aemond and Criston discover the fallen two, Sunfire and Aegon. Sunfire is incredibly injured but still alive, while Aegon is burnt to a crisp. But yes, he is still alive as well, although it is described in the book that he wished for death over this fate. It reads as follows. Aegon suffered from burns that covered half his body, a broken hip, and numerous broken ribs. His armor had melted into his left arm, and it would take him a year to recover. His mind clouded by milk of the poppy, causing him to sleep 9 hours out of every 10. He did not rise from his bed for the rest of the year, and some say he prayed for his death. Only his mother, Queen Alicent, and his hand, Sir Criston Cole, were allowed to disturb his rest. Prince Aemond took over the rule in his stead as Prince Regent and protector of the realm. Aegon remained bent and twisted for the rest of his life, half his body covered in burn scars. And as Criston and Aemond lay their eyes on their casualties, the episode ends. Overall, an absolutely incredible episode in my opinion. An extremely emotional episode as well, with incredible visuals and incredible battles between the dragons. The Battle of Rook's Rest was done incredibly well in my opinion, despite some changes. Some may say it was too quick, but when you have so many dragons in battle, it's bound to be over pretty quickly. Personally, I absolutely adored this episode, although I will say that I will deeply miss that of Rhaenys. But this episode was an easy 10 out of 10 for me, and I cannot wait for next week's episode. But yeah, that about does it for this episode, from me at least, but of course I would like to hear your thoughts on the episode as well, so leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown and review on this episode, don't forget to give it a like. And with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.